My son got his new girlfriend pregnant after divorcing his wife because the spark had gone out. Now he's gone because it's too much responsibility. This situation has had me a bit confused, so one of my neighbors suggested I post it here. I, 55 female, have 2 children, George 31 male and Gabrielle 29 female. Gabrielle recently got engaged and I am helping her plan the wedding in my spare time, which the entire family is very excited for, except for George. George recently divorced his wife of 7 years, Susanna 28 female, after he said the spark had gone out. They have a set of twins together, Amy and Alice 6 female, and are trying to set up a healthy co-parenting relationship. Susanna is a great mother to my grandkids, and I was disappointed in George for giving up so fast on their relationship without even trying couples counseling. But it wasn't my business or place to say anything. The drama started when George brought his new girlfriend to dinner at my house. He met his girlfriend Bethany 25 female through a work colleague, and they have been dating for 4 months. At dinner, Gabrielle and I were discussing flower arrangements and Bethany felt the need to ask George if he'd ever marry again. George coughed before replying that he'd have to think about it, which Bethany seemed to deflate at. Well, this caused Alice to cry about how she wants Mommy and Daddy to love each other again. George and Bethany just sat there while my granddaughter screamed. After I comforted Alice, I pulled George aside and asked if he was sure about Bethany, which he told me was none of my business. I told him it was my business who he invited into my home and my grandchildren's lives, since I've been caring for them in my spare time while he works. He and Susanna have 50 and 50 custody. George got angry and said it was Gabrielle's fault for mentioning weddings in the first place. I told him to stop acting like a child and to be happy for his sister. Then Bethany felt the need to insert herself and tell me that she and George were together no matter how much I liked his ex-wife. After that, I was done with the conversation and asked them both to leave. George and Bethany stormed off, flipped me the bird, and left my grandchildren at my house at 7 p.m. I had to call Susanna to collect the children since they had school in the morning, and I was attending a cake tasting with Gabrielle the next day. I feel like I shouldn't have to tell my 31-year-old son to be happy for his sister or argue with a random woman whom I have never met before in my own home. From the comments. You have a bigger issue at hand because Alice will hate every new partner because in her head she believes they kept Mommy and Daddy from loving each other. Your main focus should be to explain to Alice that grown-ups falls out of love, and it has nothing to do with the love they have for her. It won't be a healthy co-parenting when Alice already hates every woman who tries to replace her mom. She needs more attention and maybe counseling. She had a strong reaction. Oh, my husband, and I have suggested that George pay for her to get some counseling, but he keeps saying that he needs to save and can't afford it. Update. I didn't expect this post to gain so much attention, and I want to thank everyone who gave their honest opinions and helpful suggestions. This situation happened a few hours ago, and I thought it right to make an update. Bethany came to my house to apologize for how she acted at dinner last week. She told me that she was 2 months pregnant and George had broken up with her after she told him, because he has too much responsibility and didn't want to be in the baby's life. I then spent the better part of 3 hours talking with Bethany about the baby and what she wants. She says she wants to keep the baby even if George refuses to be in its life, and I told her that I would help with childcare if she needs it since she doesn't have any family that live nearby. Before I got angry with George, I thought I would call him and give him a chance to explain. George was angry that Bethany had shown up at my house and insisted that it wasn't his baby. I told him that he should get a paternity test, and he asked me for $500 to cover it since he's struggling. I told George that he needs to figure it out himself since he's about to be a father of 3, and that he better step up and do right by his kids. George then hung up. Well, 2 hours later I get a call from Susanna to say that George hadn't picked up the kids like he'd previously agreed to, and could she drop them at my place because she had work. I agreed for her to drop Amy and Alice off and tried to call George again. I called 12 times and they all went to voice message. I don't know where George is and have called his place of employment to try to find out, however they refuse to tell me anything. I've agreed to watch Amy and Alice until Wednesday and Susanna has reported this incident to CPS. I assume she plans to file for full custody, and I can't blame her. Right now I'm worried that George has run off somewhere or done something irresponsible. I am disgusted and will not be doing him any favors in future, unless he has a very good explanation and accepts some responsibility. This was hard to write, but felt good to get off my chest. Thank you everyone for responding to my first post. Update. Okay, so I made the original post about 2 months ago, and since then things have been a bit crazy lately, so I just wanted to update as I had people asking if George was okay. In my first post, people suggested I give George some space and time to figure things out as a recently divorced father, but after he ran off around 2 months ago, I ended up filing a missing persons report. I talked to George's workplace the day after I filed the report, and they told me he had given his 2 weeks about a month ago. I then tried calling George again, and he finally picked up. He told me he was okay, but he had moved states and no longer wanted any contact with his children because it was all too much responsibility for him. I snapped at George and told him he couldn't just decide now he didn't want to be a father. Then George told me he never wanted kids in the first place, and those kids don't look anything like me anyway. George then told me to F off and hung up the call. After that, I informed the police department what had happened to let them know George wasn't in any danger, and that we knew his whereabouts. After that happened, I just cried because I couldn't believe I had raised such a selfish person. Susanna has filed for full custody, and George, as far as I know, is refusing to pay child support and will probably end up in jail at some point. Bethany is now 4 months pregnant and is having a boy, and George is the father. Somehow he managed to come up with the 500s, so he will have to pay child support since he doesn't plan on being in the baby's life. Bethany moved into my home in November since she's had trouble doing things herself, and her doctor says she's at risk of preeclampsia if she becomes too stressed during the pregnancy. In that time we have gotten closer, and despite how our first meeting went, I actually have come to like Bethany. Sorry, this isn't the happy ending some of you were expecting. I have been following the advice I received from the first post, and have not contacted George, and he has not tried to contact me. I can only hope with time he pulls himself together and manages to step up as a father. Again, thank you to everyone who gave helpful advice. I'm not sure if I will be updating further, however. From the comments. 1. Oh wow, my heart aches for you and your family. We can only hope that he has an awakening and becomes a better father. 2. I hope you are making time for you. Please loom into therapy if you have means and access. Help stress management tools will help protect your physical health as well. Good luck to you and your family. 3. What a mess. Why would Bethany want to continue with this pregnancy? Doesn't sound like she has the family or the money needed for this child. Oh, P. Thank you. It's been hard for our family to cope with George being so irresponsible, and I have been in and out of the hospital for the past 2 weeks due to the stress of the whole situation. I hope George steps up, though he hasn't even sent Christmas gifts for his children. My husband and I are looking into funding some family therapy and individual therapy for the twins, but we're waiting to see if our health insurance will cover it. Bethany is convinced that George will change his mind once the baby is born, which I have tried to tell her probably won't be the case, but Bethany is convinced he will, and no one can tell her otherwise.